Today, we're going to analyze the behavior of Denali Brehmer. This is a really interesting case because it involves several people. Greg, tell us about the videos we're going to watch.
Yeah, so this video is from Court TV's Interview with the Killer, and the host is David Scott. I only mention that because I think we're going to talk about the host a bit, and we want to use his name. Bremer was sentenced to 99 years in prison for the 2019 murder of her friend Cynthia Hoffman. She was also received a 30-plus year sentence in state court for other reasons we won't talk about a lot here, but you can find it. She killed Hoffman after Darren Schulmiller, a 21-year-old man living in his grandparents' basement, catfished online and offered her $9 million to kill Hoffman. Her story.
And that's when you meet a man online. He calls himself Tyler.
Yeah. Well, first his name was Hayden, and then when he gave me his Snapchat, it was Tyler, which kind of raised a red flag. But then again, I've seen it multiple times. Guys don't want to give you their real name.
At one point, did he start asking you to do sexual things for money?
I mean, that's kind of like how we met, was on the dating app. Hey, I'll do this for cash. If you want to know anything more, text me. So, like, he knew right out the bat what I was up to, and so that's where I make my money. So he was sending me money for photos, for
He was paying you
for photos and videos,
for
yeah.
photos and videos at that point.
And I mean, like, I'm not gonna lie, he was paying me a lot.
And the requests get more and more perverted.
Yeah, he was, like, pushing more and more money towards me.
Was that not a red flag for you, that he's starting to ask for more and more perverted things?
I've had that before. I'm not gonna lie, like, a lot of guys have asked for it before.
So it's not that outside of your prior experience,
what I've been offered.
I assume that he was not using his real picture.
No, he wasn't. Or his real credit card. You can set up a PayPal nowadays with anything. So he was using a PayPal account to pay me.
And he made some outlandish claims about his wealth, right?
Yeah.
About all of that. And did that seem plausible to you?
Well, I mean, at first, no, but then, like, when my PayPal started blowing up with bigger and bigger sums, it started to kind of, like, maybe make sense.
He's telling you he loves you.
Yeah.
In fact, you're telling each other you're in love.
Yeah, I told him that too, but, like, I don't know. Even, like, now I'm starting to question if I really believed it. Like, I just think I just kept wanting him to get me easy money.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, okay. So I would say first off, quite minimal body language overall. Now, that's not to say you haven't got four people who might be able to pick out some real intricacies of what's going on here. There's going to be a lot in here, but as a good general rule, it's quite minimal what's happening here. And I would say that's probably because there's some, let's call it prison body language in there, in that she's probably used to locking down a little bit, not doing too much, not making big moves. As you see here, I'm not incarcerated. I'm not in prison. I don't need to worry about making big moves in other people's territory. So I'm big and bold with my gestures. We're not going to see that so much from her. So anything big that she does do, that's what I'd like to focus on. And we'll see this right hand come up now and again, sometimes two hands, often the right hand, and it's out of the minimal baseline that she has. So where does this come in? He knew right out the bat what I was up to. Up comes that right hand. He knew right out the bat what I was up to. I would say when this right hand comes up, she is emphasizing what she wants us to know, the story that she wants us to know. Now, is it truth or a lie? I think I'll be dependent on others to put in other clusters in there. But certainly what I'd say, she gets more animated and bigger on some of this. And I think that's because this is the story, true or false, this is the story that she wants us to really pay attention to. He knew right at the bat what I was up to, and she shakes her head on that as well, rather in a way of saying, look, this was not my bad. This is not my bad at all. This is the way he knew what I was up to. It's not my bad if it went in this direction. I think this is her general defense, her idea of being the catalyst. It's rather an idea of, look, somebody's going to die eventually anyway. If she speeds things up, it's just a catalyst. She's not actually an agent or a reagent in this. Everybody's going to die anyway, eventually. She's just speeding the thing up. She's not really a part of it. And one last thing on this. I've had that before. We're talking about the big sum, the big sums being offered to her. I've had that before, and there's a big kind of postural bump there. She's very confident around that. When I say big, it's actually quite minimal, but compared to all the other minimal movements there, it does show up to be out of that baseline. Bigger and bigger sums, bigger and bigger sums. So clearly she gets excited when she wants us to recognize a story, and she is excited by the idea of the money. Chase, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, I totally agree. And one statement she says here that was big to me. She says, at first his name was. And notice she didn't say he said his name was. She relays this to us as a fact and not a claim. I think that's a micro signal of low skepticism baseline, like highly suggestible as a human being. So she's already leaning forward and leaning toward acceptance instead of analysis. And she's saying, I'm still questioning if I believed this thing. This is cognitive murk. Her voice is her voice lifts right at the believed it. This is a classic upward inflection of uncertainty and suggestibility. And when somebody can't even tell if they believed a lie, then they've been way inside of it just too long. So let's talk about her baseline really quick. When she's skeptical, we see a lot of these small lower eyelid squeeze right here. It's subtle, but it's very consistent. And she looks down left here quite a bit to access a lot of these answers. And this is associated with internal dialogue or linguistic recall. Likely not rehearsed, but it's filtered through some internal processing here. But there's a willingness to say, this is big for me. There's a willingness for her to say unflattering things without hedging. And it shows that she's not in reputation defense mode. She's just in justification. Like, that's rare to see. Somebody declares the interview and they're not covered in makeup, everything looking good, and they're unwilling to say these things. We see this all the time. But one note, Mark, to this postural bump thing, I think in her mind, desirability equals elevation. So her vocal fry increases, and we see this micro smile start creeping onto her face when she's talking about being paid or wanted in some way.
So Bank of America got hacked again, and instead of telling you, they sat on it for months. No press conference, not an email, just silence, while your personal data was out there drifting through these hacker forums like a cigarette in a motel pool. Here's the part that'll twist your stomach. On average, it takes companies about 277 days to even admit that they've been breached, and that's about 9 months. And this isn't rare at all. It's not just a one-off thing. Last year, it was Chase Bank. Before that, it was Citigroup. These aren't mom and pop banks. These are the biggest names in the financial game, and their walls are paper thin. And right now, your bank could have been breached and you're just kind of sleepwalking through everything. That's not fear-mongering. That is just reality. You've been sold the illusion of security, and behind the curtain is a room full of outdated firewalls and lawyers prepping these disclosure statements. That's why I am not waiting around. I use Aura. Aura scans the entire dark web like a bloodhound on a scent. So if my social security number, my email, my phone, if any of that shows up out there, I get an alert instantly. And this is while the banks are still in damage control mode. So Aura is already watching my back. And if somebody tries to impersonate me or open accounts or mess with any of my credit, Aura shuts it down even before it starts. They're not just sending you alerts and good vibes. They give you up to $5 million in identity theft insurance because they know what can happen when no one's watching the door. And the whole thing lives in one simple app. It's not complicated. There's not a lot of red tape. It's just power and safety. So go to aura.com, aura.com/TBP and try it free for 14 days. And 2 weeks is enough time for Aura to even find out if your data is already out there. Odds are some of it might be. And I think the true kicker here is if something does happen, most companies will like toss you a bone. They're going to give you some free credit monitoring crap. That's their big plan, free credit monitoring after the robbery has already taken place. That's not protection, that's PR damage control, and it's about as useful as putting up flood insurance after your house is underwater. So you've been lucky thus far, and maybe that's all it is, just luck. And luck is not a security plan. It definitely isn't for me. So if protecting yourself feels a little overwhelming, good. That means you're finally seeing the truth. But Aura makes it super simple. It handles the surveillance, the alerts, the insurance. You don't have to lift a finger. So I personally am not leaving my identity or my family's in the hands of billion-dollar banks that treat breaches like it's a PR issue. So if you go to aura.com/TVP, you'll find out what's already out there before it finds you. Let's get back to the show.
And I do not think that that's pride. I think it's emotional reward that we're actually seeing. I don't think she's recalling trauma. She's just replaying, getting attention in her head. So then there's this false intimacy. We told each other we were in love, but she contradicts herself. She says, I just think I kept wanting him to get me easy money. So love was a means instead of an emotion, is how she's describing love. Love is a means to money. And then we have identity collapse. So I think her sense of self was for sale way long before what the victim, Cece, was. So she used fantasy to escape being insignificant. So we're seeing this all play out. Money, I do not think in any way that the money was about some kind of greed. I think, in my estimation as a behavior person, money equaled validation of existence, which if you go and look into her history and how she grew up, that's probably a big emotional anchor point for her initial programming, her initial software install. But there's nothing in here that's a moral anchor point. No disgust, no hesitation, no outrage. And I think it's because the behaviors that she's describing were just normalized by the simulation. And I don't think this is a one-off. And I think this is what the world in general starts to look like when we train people to crave attention more than connection, which is exactly what social media is. And I went long on this one, just this one. But in these upcoming clips, you're going to hear me use the word simulation. And I don't mean the Matrix or anything like that, not some computer thing. Well, I'm talking about the fake world that people live in nowadays online, like social media, fake relationships, curated personalities. And most of all, this comes back to performative connection. And we're going to keep coming back to this point. And the entire case is going to, in my estimation, get wrapped around performative connection. Scott, what do you got?
Yeah, she doesn't seem to have any problem opening up and what seems to be being honest about what's happening. So I agree with you on that. There's the lack of facial expressions as far as being extreme. We don't see anything that's extreme here. We see a couple of things later on that are, but I'm under the impression are fake. But I don't see anything huge here from anything that shows that she's experiencing any huge emotional upheavals or anything like that. And then when she's explaining how she was paid by a PayPal account, we see that little shoulder shrug, and she seems there's lack of confidence there. I think that's because she knows what she's doing sneaky, because the guy paying doesn't want to use a credit card. So he's using PayPal, and she's done that with other people, and she's done that online as well. So she knows that's not right. Not that it's illegal. It's illegal. You can do it. But what they're doing is illegal. So I think that's why she shows a lack of confidence in that. And then there's an instance where she's telling how somebody, who's the other, I won't get into that one. But she knows this is dodgy behavior. And that's why she's acting that way. And again, we're not seeing any kind of emotional thing where she's up or down, or it's not flat, but it is almost, I wouldn't assume she's in a bad mood if I were to watch this with the sound down and not realizing she's in prison clothes or something. It wouldn't look like she had been in trouble or something. I don't see any history of trauma on the way she's approaching this. She doesn't seem guarded. She just seems really still, and not a lot of illustrators. So, and again, going back to illustrators and emotion, when you're emotional about things, or you really want to get a point across, or you find that important, that's when your brain wants to emphasize those things. I mean, look at what Mark does. When he gets into something, man, he sells that thing. That's why he's emotional about it, and his illustrators get big. So this girl she's like she's the opposite of Mark. She's like almost nothing here, no emotions. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm going to tie some of what you guys all said together. One example is attention. I think that's her demeanor. That's her personality. Look, she shows no shame, no remorse, no anything for the stuff she's talking about. And we know she's talking about some pretty heinous acts, not just the sex things that she was doing for money, but she did some really dark, disgusting things. She doesn't come in with any facade of being embarrassed by it. And I think it's the organism doing what made the organism successful. She has been successful, in my opinion, at getting attention by being brash, outright against norm for the rest of the world. That's the reason that she doesn't show any kind of feeling about it. I don't think there really is anything there. And I think this is as close to a baseline as we're going to get. She can freely talk about sex work on the internet and about unmentionable things on the internet right here without showing any grief muscle, without showing any throat protection. The interviewer shows more grief than she does. This interviewer, if you watch his brow, he's like, what? If you see him doing this, and this guy, David Scott, even right out of the gate, appears to be amused. One of the interesting things I think this guy does a fantastic job of is keeping tension with her so that she keeps talking and needs to impress him and do whatever it is without judging. And that's a beautiful job. We're going to see it come all to fruition as he gets closer to the end of this. But she's proud of all this stuff. This is like your kid came home and said, I got an A+ today. That's what it sounds like. It doesn't sound like she's hiding anything. So if she's got no remorse, no emotions, and the shock has been the tool she uses always to get things, we don't know exactly what kind of person that is. But if you stop for 1 minute and think about the kind of people who can casually talk about murdering, casually talk about doing things, and then use those tools. If you think about Ted Bundy, the reason Ted Bundy got away with everything he did is because he had a successful model. He had looks and intellect. She's a little short on the looks and probably the intellect, so she's going to find something that causes her to behave this way. And this is a young person who did something horribly unspeakable and shows no remorse at all in this first interview. That's all I got.
One thing I think about this guy as well, what he does well, and I'd love to be able to incorporate this into interrogations when I'm doing it, but I wouldn't be able to pull it off, is because what he does is he looks like everything's fine. He's just nothing really changes in his delivery. And then he keeps just keeps pushing and pushing. She just keeps talking more and more and more. And then all of a sudden he zips it and it just comes out. Oh, I thought that was great. I thought that was really good. And he does that several times in here. So I think that would be that's something great to have. I think that skill.
Great interviewer. And you teach, when you were doing intelligence interrogation, often you have to do the same kind of thing because you're not after a confession, you're after keeping the person talking until you figure out what it is they have that you need to exploit. And so good intelligence interrogators, and the same with guys who are trying to get a confession, have to keep you talking. But in some cases, we don't even have any idea what the guy knows until we start poking and prodding. We're not after a specific piece of information. We're after anything that might satisfy a collection of requirements that big. There could be thousands of them, literally. So you might stumble into this guy who happened to see something Tuesday that isn't his day job. And so you have to keep that constant pull. And I think he does a great job. He'd be a great interrogator.
I'm going to say, though, video 8, I think he fails. I'll just put that.
It's funny. It's funny. I've got this. We're going to share the same note, Mark. I got a feeling.
No, I think you're both absolutely right until video 8. And then he steps on the best question ever.
So you got to stick around to video 8 because Mark and I are going to agree or disagree about what he steps on. But
And that's when you meet a man online. He calls himself Tyler.
Yeah. Well, first his name was Hayden, and then when he gave me his Snapchat, it was Tyler, which kind of raised a red flag. But then again, I've seen it multiple times. Guys don't want to give you their real name.
At one point, did he start asking you to do sexual things for money?
I mean, that's kind of like how we met, was on the dating app. Hey, I'll do this for cash. If you want to know anything more, text me. So like, he knew right out the bat what I was up to, and so that's where I make my money. So he was sending me money for photos, for
He was paying you
for photos and videos,
for
yeah.
photos and videos at that point.
And I mean, like, I'm not gonna lie, he was paying me a lot.
And the requests get more and more perverted.
Yeah, he was like pushing more and more money towards me.
Was that not a red flag for you, that he's starting to ask for more and more perverted things?
I've had that before. I'm not gonna lie, like a lot of guys have asked for it before.
So it's not that outside of your prior experience.
What I've been offered.
I assume that he was not using his real picture.
No, he wasn't. Or his real credit card. You can set up a PayPal nowadays with anything. So he was using a PayPal account to pay me.
And he made some outlandish claims about his wealth, right? About all of that. And did that seem plausible to you?
Well, I mean, at first, no, but then, like, when my PayPal started blowing up with bigger and bigger sums, it started to kind of, like, maybe make sense.
He's telling you he loves you.
Yeah.
In fact, you're telling each other you're in love.
Yeah, I told him that too, but, like, I don't know. Even, like, now I'm starting to question if I really believed it. Like, I just think I just kept wanting him to get me easy money.
Denali, how did murder first come up?
So, I was shooting up in the backseat of my car. I was shooting up some meth mixed with a little coke, and it only happened like a few days prior to the murder. So me and Cece had a huge fight, and she blasted all over her social media. We got this huge argument over a guy, because I slept with her ex. She slept with mine.
Okay.
Not proud of it.
Tit for tat, okay.
And, well, Tyler, Darren, found out and, you know, kind of played on my emotions, and my jealousy hit me again. And I'm not gonna lie, I got petty, and I was mad.
So who first brought up the prospect of murder? Was it you or was it him?
Darren. Darren's the one that first came up with it.
Eventually, he offers you $9 million to commit and photograph a murder.
He had already offered that, and I was like, okay, this is... But my friend was like, no, it's real. Look, it says in transaction. I'm like, what? And I looked, and I was like, oh. So I didn't know what to think.
Did you really think it was possible to send $9 million on PayPal?
Well, I mean, not on PayPal, but if you know how to do wire transfers, then yeah, I could work on a wire transfer.
You chose the victim?
Yeah, it was a group thing too, but initially, when we all came up with it, I agreed and said yeah. Because I was mad at her, and she was mad at me, and I was just over her. And I wanted to make amends. I did want to make amends, but she needed payback for what she did with Zach.
Payback with her life?
No. That's on me.
You chose the place?
Yeah.
Why there?
I guess place of opportunity.
Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, this one's huge. There's a whole lot in this one. I'll try to keep it as short as I can, but we see an immediate baseline deviation when she reaches back for that classic stress relief move. People do this all the time when they're feeling stress, or just to think sometimes, but it gives them space. She has to qualify her statement or condition her statement immediately by getting the drug details in as part of a defense. Why did she even mention that? That had nothing to do with the timeline or the question asked. It was a reason for her to say, hey, I was on drugs when it happened. Watch the pause in response. Is she talks about shooting up in the sky. The reason I laughed when you did the smile, when you told the thing about the Grammys, is she does that. It's clear. She does that when she says, I was shooting up in the back seat. She does that pause with a little smile that you do when you're trying to make a sarcastic joke.
Oh.
You'll do it on here where you go, and you're being funny. She does a quick smile right at the end of that. It looks like she's asking for approval or for effect, seeing if what she said has any effect on you. There's no reason for it to be there. She hadn't been shy about anything else. So why should she be shy about shooting up with drugs? It's a way for her to set things up. When she does this story of, talks about sleeping with the other girl's ex and vice versa, she's asking for approval. But then her body language comes up and she's like, what am I supposed to do? And she drops her hands. So it looks real. It looks really real. She drops volume and goes back to a vocal fry and fading facts and eye blocks when she says it was a group thing. I don't really believe, when I say eye block, she closes her eyes. Scott coined the phrase fading facts when somebody trails off on their words. She does that, and there's a vocal fry. That's a cluster of behavior that makes me think it wasn't a big group thought thing. It's something she thought up and then went from there, or something. She's hiding something here. She has confusion in her face for the first time at how to answer when she is asked, why did you kill her there? And she says it was a place of opportunity. This person, I'm going to skip through most of what I got. She doesn't do romance, or she doesn't pay really close attention to the guy when she's talking, because I don't think she has the right wiring to understand that people may be judging her for this. She doesn't seem to care, because the stuff she said in the past has gotten her through whatever has happened. And there's any of this stuff that she does in here is just so out of whack. There's no empathy. At the very end there, the closest we see to remorse when he's asking her about killing this girl is we see a little remorse in the rising in one side of the mouth. And I think that's disdain for the situation she's in now. I don't think it has anything to do with feeling bad about the person. I don't think this girl has any empathy. If you go look at the other videos, there's no empathy shown whatsoever. Even Ted Bundy could fake empathy better than she does. Scott, what do you got?
All right. Well, so many things change here, like her cadence, voice tone, and volume go up. Everything and then she keeps adapting with her hands under the table there. So and then you're right, Greg, going back to that adapting on the back of the neck like that. She knows what she was doing is wrong. She knows doing those drugs and shooting stuff up in the back seat and all that. She knows it's wrong, but she didn't have to bring that up. She just passed right by that. This guy'd never know. No, he would never know. But she gets right into it. So I don't understand what's going on there. Maybe she just.
Do you really think she knows it's wrong, or she's using it as an excuse?
Oh, you're probably right. She's probably using it as, you're right, loading it up in her defense. So initially she's like, well, we all came up with this. And what she says is initially. She's combined intentionally and initially together. And so instead of saying initially, she says initially, which I thought was pretty funny, but which tells us she doesn't read a whole lot. And she just heard somebody use both those words and remembers them sort of, but wants to sound like she knows what's going on. That's the impression I got anyway. So she doesn't seem to be trying to hide anything, but she's severity softening at every chance she gets. Everything isn't as bad. And whatever happened, her part in it, she was just part of it. She didn't actually do it. She brings that up, 4,000 times in this. I think she's going for the play of trying to get out early to show she's innocent, since she didn't pull the trigger, even though it was her idea and all that. That's my initial thought, is she's trying to get out doing that. But every time the murder comes up, she starts getting quieter, and we start hearing that vocal fry happening, and everything sort of slows down because she's trying to separate herself from that thing. And so what's interesting is her lack of illustrators as well, because she illustrates at some points, but overall there's not much to look at, not much going on, which makes me think there's something emotionally missing there, because going back to what I was saying earlier, there's no emotions in there to fire that up to say, listen, man, I'm telling you, it wasn't me, or whatever, when she uses her hands, when she's illustrating, getting her specific points across. So something else I find interesting is when she's talking about the murder, not only do we hear fading facts and that fry, listen to what she's saying during all that. It's almost the same thing every time. When she starts getting out, I can't imitate the vocal fry where it doesn't sound goofy and weird, but listen to what she's saying, and I'll reference that as we go along, as we get to the vocal fry each time. Listen to what she's talking about. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, I think these big gestures here, the use of the right hand when it comes up, I think it's her left that goes back behind the head. I think that's to signal her defense. That's to signal, here's the story I want you to pay attention to. I'm not saying it's not true that she wasn't shooting up in the back of a car. She probably was shooting up in the back of a car. What she's trying to do, I think, is get us to pay attention to that part of the story, so that we understand, yes, there was drug use there. She's not therefore in her right mind. Also, the hand comes up, the right hand comes up on, I slept with her, she slept with, I slept with her ex, she slept with mine. And then there's a shake of the head on that as well. I think she's saying, like Greg, you were suggesting there, like, what do you expect? what do you expect to happen if she sleeps with my ex and I sleep with hers? What do you expect to happen? Payback. So it's trying to help us understand I'm on drugs and somebody needs paying back for something wrong that they did. Yeah, I did a wrong thing as well, but they did a wrong thing, and therefore payback. Now, with somebody's life, that's when and I think the interviewer says, hey, what, payback to that extreme. Well, she's trying to put forward the logic that this is socially deserving for this to happen. Okay? It's socially deserving. The story she wants to put forward is one that we as the audience might go, well, yeah, of course. I mean, like, you slept with each other. There was some jealousy there. Somebody did something wrong. Yeah, of course somebody's gonna need to die for that. But essentially, this is outside of most of our social norms. So it's quite antisocial behavior. It's what some people would call sociopathic, in that though there's logic in there, the outcome of the logic is outside of most society's usual rules. Yeah, you can think about revenge, but you can't actually do it, or you can't do it to the extent of killing another human being. It's sociopathic behavior. Chase, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, I tend to mostly agree there. There's some great points, Mark and Greg. Awesome about just like the drive. And Mark, I think you're hitting on the Joseph Campbell story archetype of this, of like identifying, if I can identify this person's micro stories, I can identify how they're kind of viewing the narrative and what the next chapter is in their life, and just how they view archetypes in general and story arcs. And this is the only time in this whole interview that I could tell, this entire confession, where her body fully reacts. And it's not just when she talks about, it's not when she talks about the murder, not when she names the victim, not when she says, yeah, I was the one who picked the location. It's when she says, I was shooting up meth in the backseat of my car. That's when her head creeps up. Her hand comes up to scratch the back of her neck, and that's when her legs start moving under the table. Her nervous system is finally throwing up a flare. She's not hot. And you'll hear body language people talk about like this, especially with women, is a heat gesture. It's ventilation. I'm going to move the hair away from the neck because heat builds up there. It's not temperature. The hair's not there. Our body is doing this as a pacifying gesture. I don't think she planned this gesture on purpose. But I think that's just the part she is worried about. She's more worried about people judging her for these drugs than the murder. We're seeing more emotion on some of these things, just where they shouldn't be. What I would say is, what this means is the shame is living closer to her skin than the guilt is. And I don't think there's a lot of guilt going on. This is somebody who has been probably slipping for a long time, and the only thing that made her flinch was a mirror. And this interview is really doing a good job of holding up a mirror and showing her all these things that are going on in her life, and kind of feeding a lot of these behaviors back to her. But when you've been living inside of a simulated reality, like I could imagine she has simulated relationships all the time, like digital cash, fantasy rewards, you're kind of gamifying your body. The pain sticks, and shame is there because fear of judgment is our number one fear as tribal creatures. That's why public speaking is apparently the number one fear. But I think, like, in her life, connection has been replaced with PayPal and DMs. And I think that's what she calls it, a place. I think she uses the phrase, a place of opportunity. So ask yourself, why does someone squirm at meth, but they don't squirm at murder? I don't think this is normal. This is about which version of ourselves we're still feeling. And she's feeling shame more than guilt, which is very unusual in a case like this. That's all I got.
Denali, how did murder first come up?
So, I was shooting up in the backseat of my car. I was shooting up some meth mixed with a little coke, and it only happened like a few days prior to the murder. So me and Cece had a huge fight, and she blasted all over her social media. We got this huge argument over a guy, because I slept with her ex. She slept with mine.
Okay.
Not proud of it.
Tit for tat, okay.
And well, Tyler, or Darren, found out and, kind of played on my emotions, and my jealousy hit me again. And I'm not gonna lie, I got petty and I was mad.
So who first brought up the prospect of murder? Was it you or was it him?
Darren. Darren's the one that first came up with it.
Eventually, he offers you $9 million to commit and photograph a murder.
He had already offered that, and I was like, okay, this is. But my friend was like, no, it's real. Look, it says in transaction. I'm like, what? And I looked, and I was like, oh. So I didn't know what to think.
Did you really think it was possible to send $9 million on PayPal?
Well, I mean, not on PayPal, but if you know how to do wire transfers, then yeah, I could work on a wire transfer.
You chose the victim?
Yeah, it was a group thing too, but initially, when we all came up with it, I agreed and said yeah. Because I was mad at her, and she was mad at me, and I was just over her. And I wanted to make amends. I did want to make amends, but she needed payback for what she did with Zach.
Payback with her life?
No. That's on me.
You chose the place?
Yeah,
Why there?
I guess place of opportunity.
There had been a lot of premeditation and planning, right?
Yeah, there had been, and I was the only one with a gun, so I brought my Kel-Tec 9mm with me.
Tell me, what was the plan?
It was just originally just to kill her. I don't know, they didn't plan anything out, how they were gonna do it or whatever. So it was.
What do you mean they? Because you're at the center of it.
Not really at the center, but yeah, well, we all, I guess, were trying to figure it out. But I thought they were kidding.
Were you kidding?
No.
You were serious?
No.
You were kidding or you were serious? Which one is it?
Somewhere in between. I wanted her to pay for what she did, but I didn't want to kill her. I just wanted to, I guess, leave a lasting impression on her.
Okay, but by then you had agreed to kill her.
Kill her, yeah, because I
for
thought.
money,
Yeah.
right? To take her to Thunderbird Falls, to bound her with
But
duct
actually,
tape.
that just Caden came up with that suggestion while we were there. He had brought duct tape.
Okay.
I didn't even know he had it on him.
Okay, but
had
you were
big pockets.
you maybe you weren't responsible for the duct tape, but you were part and parcel of this whole conspiracy, right?
Yeah.
You're not denying that, right?
No, I knew about it, the day of, and what we
Well,
were
you
doing.
say you
and I
knew
drove
about it, but
past.
you not just knew about it.
Yeah,
you created the plan.
Well, I didn't create any plan. There was no plan.
Okay, June 2nd, 2019. In as much detail as you can recall, tell me what happened that night. You told Cynthia you were going to go on a hike, right?
Well, I said in the message we're gonna go on a hike, but when the code is we're gonna go get high and smoke some pot or
But in fact,
shoot up. And we
in
did.
fact, you had a plan, a plot to murder her that day, right?
I don't know how. I didn't even know how we were gonna do it.
You walk into I've seen the place. It's a beautiful place. You walk into the trail. You're carrying the gun?
Yeah, it was on my hip holster. It was, I'm not denying it was mine. It's just I'm not the one that pulled it. I'm not the one that shot her. I'm not the one that actually went through with everything. I'm just the one that had the means to do it.
All right, Chase, what do you got?
I don't have much here, but when she's asked if she was serious, this gives us the most revealing quote, I think, in the whole case, to me anyway. She says it was somewhere in between. And that is the simulation. And what I was talking about in video one, the digital simulated life, the gray area where nobody's fully real and nothing is fully true. It's partial reality, partial truths. And she diffuses all the guilt. He had the duct tape. I didn't know we would do it. I'm not the one that pulled the trigger. This is just shared delusion and insulation. And she's spreading the crime. If I could just spread this crime thin enough, then nobody is going to feel anything. I'm going to dilute the emotion here. And I think that's what's happening. But pay attention. She still brought the gun. She still lured the girl out. She still walked through the woods with a loaded 9mm and asked directly. She admits it. Yeah, I agreed to kill her. So I really don't think she's lying to us. She's lying to herself. We're just watching that kind of echo in this little room back and forth here. And notice how many times she tries to just offload intent. She's outsourcing intent. It's like the murder was just something that happened while they were out getting high. So the body becomes just, this person that died becomes a footnote in the way that she's describing all of this stuff. But on a human level, that is the result of a life where real accountability never showed up. And this is why we see all these influencer apology videos, like monthly, showing up that are scripted and fake. And when accountability finally does show up, she was too far gone to feel any of it. And that's what we're seeing. And we're not seeing deception. This is such an aberration, a black swan for the behavior panel, because we're not seeing someone openly trying to manage perception and deceive. It's strange on so many levels for me anyway. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, when you're a dirtbag, esteem for a dirtbag is more dirtbaggery. That's what it is. And she's showing you her esteem is all she's doing. She's saying, look, I did this, I did this, I did this. And she's uncertain of how to read this guy because the guy's doing a really good job. I think she has poor capability to read other people anyway. To your point, maybe it's because of social media, maybe it's something else. But there are billions of people on social media who don't do crazy like this. I love what he does because he keeps just the right tension between keeping her talking and condemning her to get her to do her dirtbag esteem story and to tell you, well, and if you don't believe that, there's one really, really telling little piece right in the middle where he says, you were at the center of all this. And she does a false modesty and goes, well, not exactly the center. And you can tell that she probably was the center of this. She's, like you said, she's going to spread as much blame as she can. And we can tell that because she shifts pronouns. She starts using we, they. And I think we might even see some duper's delight one time in there because she's got that weird little smile. This is probably the smartest person in the room. This is a person who's gotten away with all of this behavior. She's been this person who could say all this crazy, outlandish things and say, I do sex work for a living and that kind of stuff. Probably anywhere she goes, she talks this way. She talks to everybody. So there's no reason for her to do what we call, quote unquote, normal because she doesn't know what normal is. If you live in this kind of an environment and you live alongside people like this and you're the lead dirtbag, then it's okay whatever you want to do. I think there are a couple of places in here that we do see some deviation from baseline that makes me think it's deception. There's eye blocking and a smirk when she says, I didn't even know he had it on him. He had a roll of duct tape in his pocket. I wouldn't know what he was wearing and she even says she has to make up the details and say he had really big pockets. Why did she have to say that? Well, if you didn't know he had it, she knew he had the duct tape with him most likely as well. She's got her hands down between her legs doing the same stuff. But she trades guilt. Remember, I always say trading guilt is giving away one thing in exchange for what you actually did. But she does it in the worst way. He brought the duct tape. I didn't even know he was going to bring it. But I brought a loaded gun. That's trading guilt in a really ugly way. In fact, there's an admission, in effect, that she had the plan because they didn't have a good plan. I think I put in my notes here. There was a lot of planning, but they didn't have a plan. We're just going to kill him. And they didn't have a gun, so I brought one, which puts her right at the center of the entire thing. And then she actually says, I had the means to do it. That's guilty language. That is guilty language. That's system guilty language, meaning she's been here and she has been through this system enough. She understands means, motive, opportunity. But the other part that I love about this just tells you how our brain works or doesn't. Her logic circuit is saying, I'd rather kill somebody than be caught with drugs or a kidnapping charge. Well, that's one way of looking at the world. Probably not the way I would. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, I just think net of this, there's just two confessions, straight out confessions, which is he says, what was the plan? She says, it was originally just to kill her. Well, okay, so, okay,
How did
so
it
it's premeditated murder then, isn't it? I mean, you're saying, what then transpired. I mean, certainly she died, so the killing happened. There may have been some extra stuff she wasn't expecting that wasn't planned, but ultimately she planned to kill her and the killing happened. Okay, so, and then he says, you had a plan to murder her? She just goes, yeah. Oh, okay. So that's, as far as I can see, two straight confessions there. First one, it was originally just to kill her. Her right hand comes up and she does a beckon forward on it as well. I would get in there and go, so tell me about this, because I think some of the planning is in that move there. There's a spider and a fly in there somewhere, you know? And then you had the plan to murder her, yet the right hand comes up. So this hand tends to come in when she's excited about something, when she wants us to understand something. It's now just getting a bit confused. The first times it was the story she wants us to concentrate on. This is the stuff now she's excited about, that it was spider and fly. You know, it's premeditated, and she definitely had a plan on this one. Scott, what do you got?
Yeah, but I think the interviewer could have changed the direction a little bit the way he was asking in some of those questions.
I agree. Yeah.
Still good tension, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Makes sense. We've hit the record now, so we can tell him. Scott, you're muted.
It's what was the record?
Oh my God.
Fee, it's Judy Past.
You played that so well, man. You played that so well. Wow. Wow, dude. I wondered why you were smiling a little bit, but then I thought, nah, I'm just on right now. I'm like,
You passed the record, I'm
Your
sure.
interjection was class. Like,
Wow.
Thank you.
you got a beautiful interjection.
I had no idea what Scott said, but that seems like a universal.
Yeah,
it worked.
it worked
It worked.
beautifully.
Man, I was talking about how that guy, how he would, take it from an interrogator's perspective and all that. Wow. Man, I was up in it too.
You were selling it good.
Oh, man. I was believing it.
Beautiful.
Oof.
Beautiful.
So I've taken up 9 minutes. So I just pass it on.
Well, with that was it.
With
That
that
was-
high
you were last.
enthusiasm, I want to hear this.
Yeah. What the hell was all that
Because
about?
I bought it non-verbally. I was all in.
Dude, you nailed it, man. Because I was, oh, yeah, okay. Here's this interrogator and all that. I went in deep, man. Oh, man. Okay.
When I said makes sense, was it on the
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Right on the button, man.
Timing was good.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, that's
was
too
beautiful.
bad.
That was
Wow.
worth the price of admission alone.
How long was that? Because I was going, man.
Oh, a while.
Oh, it
a
was long.
while. Break 2.5 minutes.
Wow, you guys are getting good at this, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, you missed Greg Cumber's face a couple times.
Oh, okay.
What else I got shit.
Wow.
Shit.
Okay.
Give us, Scott, give us the net kind of précis of the
Okay.
general.
I was planning this is why I was smiling.
Give us the general gist of what
Okay.
you were actually saying.
Okay, the gist of it is she's talking. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
What do I say? 1, 2, 3, car high.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
hear you.
Okay. So in a nutshell, then she's got this, she's got her Caltech 9mm. You don't talk about that as a Caltech 9mm. I knew that's when I saw a reaction that was not there when you guys, that's okay. I remember that now, going over that and not seeing what I should have seen reaction wise. Anyway, especially from Greg. But you don't say, I've got a Caltech 9mm. You say, man, I got a P15 and I did this, So she doesn't hang around with gun enthusiasts. She just has one. I'm sure she's the only one she knows that has one. And she probably doesn't shoot it very often. She doesn't go to the range or anything like that. So she's not proficient with it. But she still has her hip holster, and she has that right there with her. So, but still, I don't think she understands guns obviously from a safety point of view. So, and again, she's removed herself from the center of the killing because she didn't pull the trigger. And she goes back to that thing where she's talking about trying to get, I think she's trying to get time off. I think she's trying to get out of there early. And then she talks about knowing her friend brought the duct tape, what you were talking about, Greg. You know, she knew he had duct tape. Or if they had a plan to kill this girl, what were they going to do? You know, of course she knew. She said, well, we got to tie her up. We got to do this and this. They talked about that. They didn't say, well, let's just all go out there and kill her. No, there had to be a plan in more depth than what she's talking about. There's more details than what she's saying there were. So for me, that's deceptive. And the only time I think we're seeing her be deceptive is when she locks down like this and there's not a lot of movement going on. There's a couple of them where she doesn't move at all in these videos. And then after that, she said she had the gun but didn't pull it, you know, and she didn't shoot her. She was just the one who had the means to do it, you know. So if there was no realization that was going to happen, she wouldn't have brought that gun in the first place, except to run around and go, oh, look, I've got a gun. Here's a reason to have it. So, and this guy apparently shot her, she says. But when this guy grabbed her gun, there's so much, like what I do, where's the weapon training? You look at all the places somebody could have a gun. Where is it? Why would it be there? Why are they acting like that? If you have a gun on you, you're not used to having it all the time, you're going to be touching it a lot. You're going to be putting if it's right here where hers was, you're going to be putting his arm down there a lot, just keeping an eye on it, you know, doing that. And this guy supposedly comes up and takes it from her. No, that's not going to happen because she's going to do this number. She's going to push more and say, what are you doing? It's not going to surprise her. He's not going to take the gun and she's just going to stand there and let him do that. So she's done more than she says she did. And I bet they talked about if she was supposed to do it, I bet she big mouthed, I'll be the one that does it. And he ended up doing it. In other words, she talked him into it. That's the feeling I get from watching this. That's the way people look like when they're overselling something. And I think she's overselling here.
There had been a lot of premeditation and planning, right?
Yeah, there had been. And I was the only one with a gun, so I brought my Cal-Tec 9mm with me.
Tell me, what was the plan?
It was just originally just to kill her. I don't know, like, they didn't, like, plan anything out, you know, like, how they were going to do it or whatever. So it was
What do you mean they? Because you're at the center of it.
Not really at the center, but yeah, well, we all, I guess, were trying to figure it out. But I thought they were kidding.
Were you kidding?
No.
You were serious?
No.
You were kidding or you were serious? Which one is it?
Somewhere in between. I wanted her to pay for what she did, but I didn't want to kill her. I just wanted to, like, I guess, leave a lasting impression on her.
Okay, but by then you had agreed to kill her.
Kill her, yeah, because I thought...
For money.
Yeah.
Right? To take her to Thunderbird Falls, to bound her with duct
Actually,
tape?
that just... Caden came up with that suggestion while we were there. He had brought duct tape.
Okay.
I didn't even know he had it on him.
Okay, but
He had
you were...
big pockets.
You maybe you weren't responsible for the duct tape, but you were part and parcel of this whole conspiracy, right?
Yeah.
You're not denying that, right?
No, like, I knew about it, like, the day of and what we were doing.
You say you knew about it, but you not just knew about it.
Yeah,
you created the plan.
Well, I didn't create any plan. There was no plan.
Okay, June 2nd, 2019. In as much detail as you can recall, tell me what happened that night. You told Cynthia you were going to go on a hike, right?
Well, I said in the message we were going to go on a hike, but what in code is we're going to go get high and smoke some pot or
but in fact,
shoot up. And we did.
In fact, you had a plan, a plot to murder her that day, right?
I don't know how, I didn't even know how we were going to do it.
You walk into I've seen the place, it's a beautiful place. You walk into the trail. You're carrying the gun?
Yeah, it was on my hip holster. It was, I'm not denying it was mine. It's just I'm not the one that pulled it. I'm not the one that shot her. I'm not the one that actually went through with everything. I'm just the one that had the means to do it.
You told the police that it was your gun.
It was my gun.
Right?
I don't deny it was my gun. I didn't order him.
You ordered the execution of Cynthia.
No, I did not order him to do anything. We panicked.
You didn't give him the gun and tell him to shoot her?
No.
Why'd you
I
tell the
again
police
told
that?
them that because I was trying to protect Caden at first. 'Cause
Reading the
I
record,
didn't know
it
what to
sounds like the
think.
opposite, because at first you were pointing the finger at him.
Well, he did
and-
shoot her.
And then you admitted that you ordered him to do it because you could not pull the trigger.
No, I never like ordered him to do it.
It sounds like you're now, after confessing to the police that you ordered him to shoot her, that you were the mastermind. It sounds like you're now backtracking and pointing the finger at others to reduce your culpability. That's what it sounds like.
I'm not trying to fully do that. I'm just like saying what really happened now. Like, even in the interview room, when I listen to my interview, you have this guy leading me, just like, yes, you did this, you did this, you did this, you did this, and, you know, gave, and I was like, I guess I did, yeah, I did. And
You're
this
claiming now that this was a false confession, a
No,
coerced
it-
confession?
part certain details, yeah.
Well,
Like,
how about that? That's not a detail. That is the definition of first-degree murder. If you premeditated, planned the event,
well, we did premeditate and
and then
plan it.
and then ordered the execution of Cynthia Hoffman.
So we did premeditate it, we did talk about it, and I guess we planned it in stupid ways, but I never ordered him to shoot her. That's the one thing that they and I myself got wrong.
Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, I just got one thing, which is it's just a lovely body language signal, and that's the use of inverted commas around stuff that's kind of factual. She says she talks about premeditated murder. Well, she's already said like there was originally a plan just to kill her, and you know you had a plan to murder her. Yeah. But now she's putting inverted commas around premeditated. So again, the idea is the story is she didn't think about this beforehand. Yet previously she said that she did. Okay. But it's just the beautiful idea that if you do that around something, it's not real anymore. It's not real. Okay. So Chase, what have you got? And people would instantly go, oh, clearly Chase doesn't exist. Clearly Chase is no longer real because Mark did that around the word Chase. No, Chase is absolutely real. And me doing that makes zero difference to the fact that Chase is real. Anyway, Chase, what do you got on this one?
Thanks, Mark. This is the first time that we were really seeing her off script. And you can see that, like, she's really, like, I don't think she's making an effort to be honest. I think that's, like, she's just default to, like, this is what happened. She's just such an interesting dichotomy. Like, there's just so many things going on. Her composure just cracks, and the fidgeting under the table starts spiking. She gets stuck in nervous laughter here. And it's one of the only nervous laughter that we're going to see. And her language shifts. She starts using different words. She starts like stacking filler words like and I guess. And I don't think that's a stress response. I think it's just she is cognitively scrambled right now, trying to catch up to the words the interviewer is using. And he's using some pretty big words. So what changed? It's in my mind, it's very simple. The interviewer corners her into intent. And that's all he's doing. Any good interviewer is going to do that. Ordering the murder, and that's where she starts panicking. Not when she's describing the killing, doesn't care. And let me tell you, if you watched a human being, even a human being that you hated, get shot in the back of the head, that will destroy you forever. That you cannot recover from that easily. That is very, very difficult if you're a normal person. And that's why I think this is so bizarre and unusual here. It's talking about the gun is when she starts feeling all this. And there's a reason I think this moment rattles her, because up till now, she's been able to wear the I went along with it costume. It's passive. It's survivable to her. But giving the order changes the story from being a passenger on the plane to the pilot of the plane. So she just doesn't want to be the architect. And just look at what she reaches for. She says, I was led in the interview. They were feeding me lines. That's a classic reaction, behavior under stress. When people feel like their identity is on trial, someone's trying to mess them up, they scramble for a softer version of the story almost every time. And the story that they will scramble for is softer, and it's a story that's going to still protect their ego. And you're going to see this whether you're doing corporate America interviews or you're talking to your 11-year-old who did something stupid in middle school. But she even says, I guess we planned it in stupid ways. That line's gold to me. I think it's denial with minimization, but it's like if premeditated murder becomes less severe if it's done in a crappy way. That's kind of what she's offering up to us on a little plate here. But here's what I think this reveals about the simulated world that she's living in, this selling her stuff for money and all this kind of stuff. In that world, intent, the word intent, the actuality of intent is elastic. And it's a culture of half-truths and all these influencer apologies like we talked about, and the I didn't mean it like that. Because on the internet, you can do the retrospective, I didn't mean it like that. And this becomes a thing you adjust after the fact. So she's not trying to lie her way out. She's trying to emotionally just unplug from the version who gave the order or who said, can you do it? Because that version threatens this new narrative of I was just there. So she didn't mind being an accomplice, but the pilot is where the masks, I think, starts really slipping. And you definitely see it here in this video. Greg?
Yeah, I think the reason you see it is because she came to sell something. And what she came to sell, this takes her away her ability to sell. That is, I need less time. I want to reduce this sentence. We're going to hear her say, I want to reduce this sentence. Well, if you're the mastermind, you're not going to reduce the sentence. And I think when you say premeditated, Mark, I think what she's trying to do, agree, is lighten it. But she's also saying, well, what does premeditated exactly mean? Right. Does that mean when she says premeditated murder, because I caused her to be killed, is that murder? Really shooting the guy is the murder. She goes even in those words and to say it. And what I think we see is, I think this woman is as diabolical as anybody we've ever looked at. I don't think she has normal human feelings. I don't think she has the capability to understand what we're talking about. And I think she's a predator. And I think what we see, and I'm a big fan of killing monsters when they're baby monsters. You know, if you found Godzilla this big, you could probably stomp him instead of waiting until he can tear up the city. Get rid of him early. This is a good one to get off the street. Because I think this person, we see that eye lock the first time when she gets nervous, to your point, Chase. We see some mouth grooming and that tongue jut and that little bite, that underbite thing she does there. And all that nervous energy coming out in her hands. I think she had a plan, and her plan is not going the way she wanted it to. You hear her voice change, her tone changes, and her volume rises. One of my favorites in this entire thing is she qualifies or conditions the answer, I'm not trying to fully do that. I'm not trying to fully do that. Okay, you're trying to do it, just not fully. So here's her trying to get off on some way. She has good use of her hands when she's saying, she starts to illustrate when she says, the police department was leading me. Here's an interesting thing. If you've ever been interrogated, it feels like you're being led. It does, because they're after information. If you're trying to box somebody in and use Reed to push them in a corner, you are leading them. You are by definition leading them to water and forcing them to drink. You're waiting for the right signals. So she may believe that they fed her all this information, but what she doesn't do is say, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, I didn't do the other thing. In fact, she told the police that she did it, and so she's being very vague in what she's saying they told her to do. But he has no time for this, and this guy, David Scott, locks her down, and he really locks her down. This is a good use of logical sequence. Remember, we talk about different styles of questioning, scatter plot, where you're all over the place, and then close in for the middle, kind of like Columbo. This is the tightening the news. Yeah, Chase?
Can you just, for the record, clarify that your monsters metaphor was not about killing anybody?
Yeah, no, I don't mean killing someone literally, but I mean when you can eliminate a monster early in the stage, as soon as you identify the monster, that's a great thing. And this is a monster, in my opinion. This person would have done more of this because this is a person whose esteem rises from, it's clear this person has no shame about what she's done. We haven't seen shame show up yet. When we see shame, it's because something doesn't work for her. We'll see something a little bit later. In one of the videos, when they're asking questions, I'll wait until we get to it. Anyway, he locks her down using this logical sequence process. Here's what is the definition of this. And he locks her down so she has nowhere to go. She mills her jaw for the first time, that grinding of her jaw. Then she says, we planned it, but I never ordered. That was one thing we and I got wrong. Well, even in her denial, she's sharing blame for something she said in the interrogation room. This is, I think we're seeing a really bad guy here that just happened to be pulled out of circulation early enough.
Greg, to jump on your point even more, that's what worries me so much about her beckon forward gesture.
Yeah.
Because you could have a lineup of people and she'd be potentially going next and the next.
And
the
Mark,
next.
I agree with you. And I think the key here is, like I said in the first one, Bundy had looks and intellect to draw people in. She's using the internet and God knows what sexual things she's doing there and doing horrific things to other people. But she's using the same tool set. Get in, get people disarmed by whatever means it is you do, and then take advantage of the situation. And it's clearly what she did here. I agree with you. That's creepy. Scott, what do you got? And you're unmuted.
This is also the most pushback we've seen so far. Because this is the one she gets a little bit worked up and they're going back and forth and he's coming in really hard at her. So it sounds like she said one thing, again, to me, it sounds like she said one thing in the interrogation. I haven't heard the tapes or seen the video or whatever. And then she's saying something else here because she realizes how much trouble she's in and how she's never getting out. So I want you to get this, you say 30 years or something?
99 for the murder
yeah.
and 30 for.
So that's what she's doing. Yeah, she's trying to get out a little bit early. But you know, if they, like she said, if they give her, 80 years, she's still.
89's good.
Yeah. But so she's trying to get out early, I think, trying to come up with something to deal with that. And then we see a few spots of frustration. We see a hint of anger in there as well. This is the first time we're really seeing emotions come up on her face. They don't last that long, but they're not micro expressions. So I don't think she has the emotional ability to make those facial expressions there. And she does show discomfort when she sits up and fixes her shirt. And as well, she's adapting at the same time. So that's normal for what's going on. Her blink rate's dropped a whole lot because she's really focused on him and what they're talking about. So that's why I don't think she averts her gaze as much as she has in the past on some of these things. And I think he's doing a good job because he's going in pretty strong. He's going pretty strong with her. But again, he's being calm and nice, going back to how he's got this figured out. He knows how to do that. He's not coming from an interrogator's perspective. That's why it'd be tough for us to do that, because some people you have to do that and you have to put your personality into it and act like you're their friend and just some person there talking to them. But this guy is pulling this off. He's making it work, but he doesn't have to do that all the time. So I think he's taking the art of what he does everywhere else and just putting it here and knowing he can push really hard and then talk a whole lot and then get her talking a whole lot and then zip it. And she just keeps going. So I think that's an art. I'm really impressed by the way he's doing that.
You told the police that it was your gun,
It was my gun.
right?
I don't
And
deny it
you
was my
ordered,
gun. I didn't order
you
him.
ordered the execution of
No.
Cynthia.
No, I did not order him to do anything. We
You
panicked.
didn't give him the gun and tell him to shoot her?
No.
Why'd you tell the
again
police
told
that?
them that because I was trying to protect Caden at first. 'cause
Reading the
I
record,
didn't know
it
what to
sounds like
think.
the opposite. Because at first, you were pointing the finger at him.
Well, he did
and-
shoot her.
And then you admitted that you ordered him to do it because you could not pull the trigger.
No, I never ordered him to do it.
It sounds like you're now, after confessing to the police that you ordered him to shoot her, that you were the mastermind. It sounds like you're now backtracking and pointing the finger at others to reduce your culpability. That's what it sounds like.
I'm not trying to fully do that. I'm just saying what really happened now. Even in the interview room, when I listen to my interview, you have this guy leading me, just yes, you did this, you did this, you did this, you did this, and gave, and I was like, I guess I did. Yeah, I did.
You're
this
claiming now that this was a false confession, a
No,
coerced confession?
certain details, yeah.
Well, how about that? That's not a detail. That is the definition of first-degree murder. If you premeditated, planned the event,
well, we did premeditate
and then
plan it.
and then ordered the execution of Cynthia Hoffman.
So we did premeditate it, we did talk about it, and I guess we planned it in stupid ways, but I never ordered him to shoot her. That's the one thing that they and I myself got wrong.
Denali, of course there's sympathy for a troubled teenage girl who suffers the kind of abuse that you did. But your crimes are so brutal, so depraved and premeditated that there's nothing that really explains, let alone excuses them. You agree with that?
Yeah.
You do? There's no excuse, there's no explanation even.
No, not really.
This is not a crime where, like a lot of serious youth crime done on impulse. Yours was premeditated and planned and conniving. And again, the sheer brutality of it, it looks less like a terrible mistake and more like your true character.
I can tell you right now that is not my true character.
Was it then?
Pushed to that point, it used to be. That's like definitely the worst I've ever been. My lowest point, that's my monstrous side.
Your monstrous side. You've done a fair amount of finger pointing towards other people away from yourself in our conversation. Do you realize that?
Yeah, I do.
It kind of contradicts the idea that you are fully taking responsibility. You're parsing, for example, whether or not you are the same kind of murderer that McIntosh is because he pulled the trigger and you didn't. You're pointing the fingers at others who may have, you say, texted Tyler, as you. You're denying the child porn charges. You're denying making your younger sibling a victim of that. You're doing a lot of not taking responsibility.
It's just like the media got a lot wrong. The cops got a lot wrong. My co-defendants and I did a lot wrong. We all did something really up. And I take responsibility for my part 100%. It's just I'm not willing to take responsibility for theirs.
What is that, Chase?
There's something like a blue piece of plastic in the bottom of my cup.
Oh, let's see it. What is it? Dig it
Get
out.
out. Like,
It's
find
like
out what it is.
well, have you ever worn exam gloves? Like the nitrile exam gloves?
Yeah.
It's that color, like the dark, and it is nitrile.
Did you get a cavity search and don't know it? Yep.
Why did the cavity search show up in my cup, Greg?
I don't know. Just had to ask.
It's a mean thing to do.
QAnon's been up in there searching your stuff, man, your cups.
Huh. It might have been QAnon.
What is Q? I don't still remember when Greg and I were on something and they said the question was something about QAnon. I kept calling it Quanon. I never heard of that before. I'm still not sure what it is.
Do you say quinoa too when you eat that special salad?
Quinoa? No. Quinoa?
Yeah, I know all about QAnon. I have 2 metal fillings in the back of my teeth. They send radio signals through those.
Dang, I got a hat that does that.
Yeah.
But it's mostly it's silver.
Mhm.
Got it from Mark.
That was a colander.
That was funny. It was funny.
Remember that? I thought about that the other day. We all had on those little aluminum foil hats, and then Mark was the last one to come on. He had one on too. We thought we were going to
You
surprise
set
him.
it up. We were going to surprise you, Mark. That was so funny.
He had one too. Dang, that was funny.
That was great.
All right,
That
here
was
we go.
great.
I'll go first on this one.
right.
All right. So this is where he calls her out for being morally corrupt. And he's by saying this looks like something she would do. And she didn't know how to respond to it. He's talking about how it's part of her character. And she's trying to say, no, it's not part of my character. That it's not my true character. Of course it is. All she's talked about is this. All she's done, her past and her past criminal history of things she didn't get caught for was this. So yeah, this is her. Yeah, he's correct. This is her character showing through. So this is where the vocal fry happens the longest. And it's while she's talking about her monster side. And this lets us know that's what she's talking about, that she knows what she's talking about isn't something that's good. So every time she talks about something about the murder and what actually happened, we hear that vocal go into fry, it gets real quiet, everything changes right there. And it's the most here when she's talking about her monster side. So a lot of the times you'll hear somebody when they'll say, I don't know what happened when I drink, I turn into a monster, or I get really mad, I'll turn into this, I'll start doing that. That's what she's talking
Frank
about.
the Tank.
In the what?
Frank the Tank.
Who's that?
Damn, I can't remember the name of that movie with Will Ferrell.
Oh, yeah.
When he drinks, he becomes Frank the Tank.
Oh, I can't remember the name. I know the movie you're talking about. It was a while back.
Yeah.
I can't remember that, but I know what you're talking about. Oh well. She's doing all the things that show she's trying to connect with him. As he's talking, she's shaking her head and going, yeah, and all that. She's at this point, she's trying to connect and make that connection so he'll back off a little bit, I think. And maybe she's used to doing that and it's worked for her in the past. And then when she turns and looks, I think she must have heard something in the room. So I don't think there's anything big to that. And then she keeps going back to we all did it. And what they did was worse than what I did. In other words, even though this was her idea, she's the one who brought it up. She's the one getting revenge. She's the one talking about paying this girl back. Now it's not her fault, and they did worse than I did. It's not just me; it's all of us. They did that. Severity softening, weakening her part in there. Like I said before, trying to get out early and blame everything on him. I didn't pull the trigger. How many times you said that in here? Almost every time there's a question comes up, she separates herself from this thing. So far, every time they talk about her guilt or responsibility, her illustrators almost disappear. Some parts, like where Mark was talking about, we see the big ones come up. That's not really an illustrator. That's more her just doing exactly what you were talking about, Mark. So, but her illustrators almost completely disappear in this one. So there are a few little things that pop up, but not a whole lot. And that adapting on the table, that's been an almost constant during this. So I don't think she's feeling the kind of stress that normal people with normal brains would feel, but she is feeling a little bit of anxiety in there. Psychopaths, if she is one, they do feel a little bit of stress and they can feel a little bit of anxiety, not a whole lot. And again, not like we do. But I think she's feeling something in there, or it's boredom for her. I don't know which, but something's happening in there. So I'll leave it at that. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, actually, let me take some time to talk about this, and let's have a little conversation about how we would categorize that. So I would categorize that as a signal, because you have to be able to write in English or French or German. You have to write in a language that understands quotation marks for this to actually work. So, Greg, in Arabic, is there such a thing as quotation marks?
You don't see it like that, no.
No, okay. So what is it? Do you remember what it looks like?
It's been a while, but yeah, I
Right.
think they just, they may put it in parentheses.
But ultimately, if I went to an Arab-speaking country and did this, it's not going to work. I mean, it could mean something entirely different, which means that's a signal in that it's culturally contextual.
Emblematic gesture. Yep.
For me, yeah. So, Greg, you'd call that emblematic?
Emblematic gestures.
Yeah.
And that's directly from Desmond Morris, by the way.
Right. Yeah, so that's a signal for me because it's entirely cultural. Morris calls them emblems, I think probably for the same reason. One emblem doesn't work in this. It's like I always say, 4 stars means something very different in the Marine Corps than it does at McDonald's. And therefore, if I don't understand that I'm in a different culture and I walk up to the 4-star and say a Big Mac and fries, I'm going to get myself into potentially a lot of trouble. Potentially a lot of trouble. So here's what I'd say about this one. The interviewer's angle here is you don't take responsibility, and her angle is I'm not going to take all of the responsibility. Yeah, so she's taking some, but not all, and that speaks to me about fairness. So she has a very human idea here, a very kind of social mammalian idea, or yeah, a social mammalian idea of fairness. Like you've seen all those videos of dogs where one dog is given one thing and the other dog isn't given another, and the dog's like, what happened? Hang on, what happened there? So all social mammals on the whole understand the idea of, hang on, like there's fair. And so fair is contextual. So we might not see it as very fair at all that she killed somebody, okay? She's saying it's not fair that she's taking all the responsibility for this. Most of us would go, look, you did an unfair act in the first place. She's going, let's not even talk about that. Let's just talk about what's fair for me in this situation. So fairness, it's entirely contextual, which is why we don't often understand somebody saying something is unfair, because we're not in their situation. She believes this is very unfair of what's happened to her here. Chase, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, this is the moment she gets cornered. There's no more passive language. There's no more vague mental fog. The interviewer hits her dead on. And this was just conniving. She shifts into a childlike, regressive tone when she says, no, not really. You can hear her voice soften like it has never softened throughout this whole interview. And that is not innocence. That's not the reason that's happening. That is a regression pattern. So this is a subconscious attempt to soften her presence and avoid judgment. That's what that is. And any interrogator has seen this 100 times within the first 2 years. But then she drops the big reveal here of, that was my monster side. That I would have bet $1,000, Mark, you were going to bring up Jekyll and Hyde. But even here, she frames it as past tense. She's trying to get the audience to believe that all this is no longer some active code written in her software. What we're watching is the identity management under pressure. So she's not denying that she did it. She's denying that it defines who she is. That's what she's trying to do. And it's maybe a parole thing or something like that. Of course, getting on parole satisfies a level of Maslow's pyramid. So of course, like that's what a human should be doing. Like, I need to be out of here so I can do things. But here's the behavioral contradiction. She says, I take responsibility 100%, but immediately follows it with, but I'm not going to take responsibility for theirs. So it's like just selective culpability. She wants to control, it's like a blame all-you-can-eat buffet. She'll eat all the parts that hurt less. Everybody else gets everything else. She just wants this part of being a good person. You're also going to notice a shift in narrative agency. If you've ever heard of that phrase before, when things get really dark, the other things that she did, which were horrifying, and we can't even talk about on the channel here, she starts pointing outward. And this is trying to outsource shame again. And I'm going back to this because this is the world she lived in. In the simulation world where she lived, we're taught that our worst moments are not who we are. They're just bad days. Think about it. Even if you spend a day a month on social media, it's like it doesn't define you. It was just a bad day. That works on Instagram. It doesn't work in court. So she started defining her life because she's spending hour upon hour upon hour inside of this ecosystem. So the real danger isn't just in the act itself. It's in the person who tries to compartmentalize all that away and try to walk away. She keeps saying, that's not me. My question is, and I'll pass it to you, Greg, or Scott. No, wait, Scott, you went. I'll pass it to you, Greg. If it wasn't her, who was it?
I could tell you who it was. It was her Bundy twin. She Ted Bundy's to the letter right here. And this is where, Mark, I think David makes a mistake. Right here, he starts rattling off things she's done, but he doesn't force her to defend those things. She does exactly what Ted Bundy did with the good reverend. She goes, bam, 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 waits until he comes out and says, is that you or some other reason? And guess what? She has a reason, just like Ted Bundy did. It's the darkness is what Ted Bundy called it. She calls it her monstrous side. So she's got a plan. She does exactly what Bundy did. She waits for a declaration about her that allows her to say, it wasn't me. Because she can't. It's really easy to say, that's not who I usually am. I just did something crazy. But what you can't do is define why you did those things. And if you force a person to define those things, and you do one and they have to defend, and then another and they have to defend, and another and they have to defend, and then you pull it all back together and say, you're just a dirtbag. You're just a scumbag. You're just a little monster. All those things I've set up to now, you can lock her down. And this is the one where I think he misses Mark. I think he misses the opportunity. In this monster side, if you could go, I'd love for us to be able to overlay this and put back in Bundy doing the same thing, because it is so clear. And it is her. No, this is you. This is in your core DNA, because you're here to try to get something out of it. She gets so agitated. To your point, Chase, she starts moving around, and she even goes into what I call the egg protector. Remember, there's a fig leaf where men cover their groin. She crosses her abdomen. He gets her so well. He's got her on the ropes so hard. She crosses her ovaries with her arm to protect. This is more and more and more of the organism doing what made the organism successful. She's a big monster of a dirtbag, and that's all there is to her. That's all I got.
Damn.
I'll tell you why I didn't mention Jekyll and Hyde, because every time I talk about Jekyll and Hyde, people write down below that I should be pronouncing it Jekyll, and not with a London intonation of Jackal. Yeah,
Well, yeah,
they're like,
I sent you a picture of who she made me think of. The Tweety Bird where he got into the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde potion on the weekends.
I want to keep to myself what I think she looks like, because it's bad. As you fellas know.
Denali, of course there's sympathy for a troubled teenage girl who suffers the kind of abuse that you did. But your crimes are so brutal, so depraved and premeditated that there's nothing that really explains, let alone excuses them. You agree with that?
Yeah.
You do? There's no excuse, there's no explanation even.
No, not really.
This is not a crime where, like a lot of serious youth crime done on impulse. Yours was premeditated and planned and conniving. And again, the sheer brutality of it, it looks less like a terrible mistake and more like your true character.
I can tell you right now that is not my true character.
Was it then?
Pushed to that point, it used to be. That's like definitely the worst I've ever been. My lowest point, that's my monstrous side.
Your monstrous side. You've done a fair amount of finger pointing towards other people away from yourself in our conversation. Do you realize that?
Yeah, I do.
It kind of contradicts the idea that you are fully taking responsibility. You're parsing, for example, whether or not you are the same kind of murderer that McIntosh is because he pulled the trigger and you didn't. You're pointing the fingers at others who may have, you say, texted Tyler, as you. You're denying the child porn charges. You're denying making your younger sibling a victim of that. You're doing a lot of not taking responsibility.
It's just like the media got a lot wrong. The cops got a lot wrong. My co-defendants and I did a lot wrong. We all did something really up. And I take responsibility for my part 100%. It's just I'm not willing to take responsibility for theirs.
Doesn't justice require that you spend the rest of your life behind bars?
People would say that yes, it demands it, and I don't see myself getting out anytime soon.
But you are working on an appeal to reduce your sentence.
I am working on the appeal, yes, to reduce the state sentence.
What does that say about you?
So,
on one hand, you say you've taken full responsibility.
I have, but, I'm already spending the rest of my life in here, but 99, you can give me 80, and I'll still be serving the rest of my life in prison. It doesn't, the number is just kind of like what hits hard.
You think you deserve to get out of prison? Do you think you deserve another chance after what you've done?
I think everybody deserves a second chance if they're truly ready for it. And I know by that time, I'll be ready. Not now. I'm not asking to get out tomorrow. I mean, 30 years is a lot to work on myself, 40 years, 50 years. And if by that time I'm finally ready to try again, I can try again.
Your letter to the judge, sentencing, contains, it seems like, some honest truths, but also a lot of platitudes, like you're just saying what you're supposed to say, right?
No, I
No?
came up with that myself because I am committed to change. I'm committed to bettering myself. I'm trying every day to just do one good thing.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, that still at the very beginning of this clip is disturbing as all hell, where she's young and she's in a jumpsuit, hands cuffed. Her eyes are down to her left. We consider that internal voice. She's thinking of something and she's smiling. That is disconcerting. But if you need constant stimulation, whether it's real or virtual, in order to feel anything, which Scott, this is one of your people, cue the sweet and sour pork story here. This feels a lot like one of those people. When they ask her questions, she says, some people would say it demands it, spending the rest of your life. And you can see disgust. When we say disgust, everybody recognizes it because you know that look with your nose where you're doing a bad milk, that smell. He has to lead her to introspection to even think about what this means. She's working him, and then she gets to this point, and Mark, I know you're going to bring up, I'm going to hand it off to you next because there's a good one in here. But she gets to the point where she's not asking to get out tomorrow, long fishing vowel. And then she goes to internal voice and she fishes with her eyes for an answer when she says that. I think she thinks this is doing her some good some way. Surely doesn't. I can't imagine anybody ever looks at this and says, oh yeah, let's let her out again. Let's see how this goes. Mark, what'd you see?
Yeah, look, this is the point for me where I think David, I think his name is doing a great job. And I think we've hit on that a number of times. But where for me personally, he misses something that I'm particularly interested in, it is that introspection question, which the way he phrases it is what does that say about you?
Yep.
And she goes looking for an answer, and we can see her eyes go up and around, and she's silent for a while. And that suggests to me she has nothing filed away on this, which is great for that question. Because what that question does is to go and get some information that they haven't told you before, which is what they think about themselves. And that can be really quite revealing. And she says, so, ... and he jumps on it and he asks something else. And if he'd have just waited, we could have got something really new from her, which she hasn't told anybody before and she isn't prepared for. Because there is something going to happen. And yeah, sure, she might have been making something up in her head, but we'd get the sense of that. And we could say, no, really, what do you think that says about you? We could just repeat the question again. So she goes and finds us a better answer on that. Anyway, that would be the moment where, where people go, but how do these people think? What is it that really goes on inside their head? That's the closest he got to a question that might reveal that, but he wasn't prepared to just wait and see what happens. Usually that question. So, what do you think that says about you? As an interviewer, at that point, you've got to shut up and you've got to know they'll break before you, but you're going to get nervous that they're not going to tell you anything at that point. They will. They'll always say something. Greg, you got some balls.
Yeah, Mark, this one following the last clip makes me wonder if he just has not had enough of her. But this is a long interview, and maybe that quick close is like, okay, good. That's good enough.
Yeah,
So I just wonder.
yeah.
He may
But
be
for me,
going, he may be going.
that
for
would be the
too,
moment
how
I'd be
fast- how
building
far he
to.
can push it.
Yeah, but Mark, I agree with you. If
He doesn't wait, unfortunately, and he breaks first, which is unfortunate on that question for me. But I agree with you, Greg. Discussed on the demands of justice. I don't think we've seen discussed from her before. So that's interesting. The social idea that justice here is demanding too much is something to be disgusted about. Scott, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this whole thing is about her getting out early. I don't think we're seeing, like you're talking about the expressions, we do see some in there, but we're not seeing the ones we should be seeing when we should be seeing them. And they're not big, they're not large at all. So I don't think she has the emotions to fire off these facial expressions that should be there. And all she's talking about in this one, again, goes back to my thing, the thread's been run through all this, is she wants to get out early, because when she says everyone deserves a second chance, yeah, when they're ready for it. She doesn't say when they feel guilty, when they feel remorse, when they understand what they've done is wrong, when they've apologized to the family on all these things, when they're ready. What is ready to her? That's what I'd want to know. I don't think she knows. I think she's ready now to get out now. If they said, well, we're going to let you out right now, she'd go, oh, thank you so much. That's great. It's fantastic. I don't think we'd see her jump up and hoop and holler and get all, worked up, because I don't think she has that in her. She would know she's supposed to, but it's not in there. That person that we're assuming is in there to make her, that would show all those things, isn't in there. I'm going to keep it short, this one, because I think this goes directly to her wanting to get out. Well, she talks about it, wanting to get out early. So, and that's where I think we're sitting on this at this point. Chase, what do you got?
Totally agree. So when she's asked if she deserves another chance, she says, I think everyone does if they're ready for it. But again, tone check. There's no visible remorse, no emotional instability for what happened, no cracks. This is not somebody who is crushed by what they did. This is somebody calibrating for like a parole board. So she keeps emphasizing, not now, I don't want up tomorrow. And Scott, you're right. Like if they said, yeah, you need to leave today. And she would be like, okay. She wouldn't say, oh no, I need more work. I need to really work on myself. She'd say, okay. She's framing herself as this project in progress. And this is what we call conscientious self-reframing. She's using language of growth and change and transformation. But what's missing here? What is missing? Genuine emotional leakage. There's no tremor. There's no hint of real shame or guilt, just polished statements like I'm trying to do, what is it, one good thing every day. I think that's what she's saying. That's the voice of somebody just reacting. And when this interviewer calls out her letter to the judge as platitudes, her defense is instant. She says, no, I came up with that myself. She's just defending the authenticity. She's not defending anything else. That's the hardest defense that she's got throughout this entire interview, is about whether or not she wrote this letter by herself. So this is the final layer of dissimulation, the redemption package that we see all the time. In a world of this, what I would call self-improvement porn that you see all over Instagram and TikTok and all this stuff, in these curated apologies that I've mentioned too many times, we're trained to sell our progress. I want to make a billboard for my progress before I've even earned it. So she's selling this version of herself that she hopes that she becomes someday, like the mere effort of this earns respect. This is what we see on social media, so she thinks this is how the frickin' world works. She's selling it to us. This is the social media simulation. But here's the real sickness, that we culturally have normalized the appearance of transformation over the actual pain of accountability. So we see this with the shitty scripted celebrity apologies that are coming out like monthly all the time. I could just make this video and I can retroactively erase something that was past. And if that post was really crappy, I can go back and delete the post. And that's how her brain is functioning. I'm not saying she believes that this is social media, but I'm saying it's given her patterns and systems in her mind to understand reality, and we're seeing it play out right in front of us.
Issue response, yep.
Doesn't justice require that you spend the rest of your life behind bars?
People would say that yes, it demands it, and I don't see myself getting out anytime soon.
But you are working on an appeal to reduce your sentence.
I am working on the appeal, yes, to reduce the state sentence.
What does that say about you? 'Cause
So,
on the one hand, you say you've taken full responsibility.
I have, but, well, I mean, I'm already spending the rest of my life in here, but 99, I mean, you can give me 80 and I'll still be serving the rest of my life in prison. You know, it doesn't, I mean, the number is just kind of like what hits hard.
You think you deserve to get out of prison? You think you deserve another chance after what you've done?
I think everybody deserves a second chance if they're truly ready for it. And I know by that time, I'll be ready. Not now. I'm not asking to get out tomorrow. I mean, 30 years is a lot to work on myself, 40 years, 50 years. And if by that time I'm finally ready to try again, I can try again.
Your letter to the judge, sentencing, contains, it seems like, some honest truths, but also a lot of platitudes, like you're just saying what you're supposed to say, right?
No, I
No?
came up with that myself because I am committed to change. I'm committed to bettering myself. I'm trying every day to just do one good thing.
All right, well, that was fairly interesting. A lot going on there. I'm sure we've all made decisions about what we think is happening. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, good. I think, look, here's what I take away from this. A second chance is not a guarantee. So therefore, justice and society should deem that, yes, everybody deserves a second chance, but sometimes you just don't get one. That's all. You just don't get one. Because with some people, giving them a second chance is way too much of a risk. I personally don't care whether they are remorseful, whether they have, found a higher power. It doesn't matter to me, okay? It's too much risk. And therefore, justice and society says that truism of everybody deserves a second chance cannot be played out. Cannot be, certainly not on my street, outside there, anyway. Chase, what do you got on this one?
Absolutely agree. And that was brilliantly said. What I just watched here didn't shock me because of the violence like it usually does. I was shocked because of how normal it felt, how normalized it was. It's a teenager orchestrating a murder with the same emotional tone as ordering pizza. And I don't think she's evil. I think she's empty. And I think there is a difference there. I don't think it's evil. I think it's just total emptiness. And I think this is what happens when attention replaces connection. When we're being wanted becomes more important than being a human being. And with that shift, anything is possible. What I just said, with that shift, anything's possible. She didn't feel the horror or the pressure. She didn't freeze when a previous friend was shot in front of her. She froze when she talked about using meth in her car. That tells you everything. And this kind of weird detachment from reality, it's not rare anymore. It's spreading, and it's spreading quicker than it should be. That's all I'll say. Greg?
So in order to be a human being, you got to have a few skills that make other human beings want to be around you. I don't see any of them here in this person. I don't see empathy. Look, a lot of people have lower levels of empathy, but they don't do violent things. If you have no empathy, no throttle, no understanding of what's normal, and no governor to prevent you from doing whatever comes to mind, Mark, to your point, you don't deserve a second chance. Sorry, you just can't fit in. You're a broken toy and you can't play. Sorry, that's just not how it works. With her, what I saw was just what we saw from Bundy. If Bundy were unattractive, less educated, and raised in the same situation. What I saw was a person who feels like they have a right to do whatever it is and talk their way out of it. And she used, instead of having looks and a vocabulary, she used shock. Shock was her way of getting people to appreciate whatever word you want to use, connect with her, whatever word. Chase used a word, I forget what it was early in the game, but where she needed that attention. This attention she gets through doing things that are outlandish And we're seeing it here. She has no compassion for a human being, no empathy, none of the skills we need for her to get out of prison. Hang on to that girl for as long as you can. Scott, what do you got?
I think this is a good example of seeing somebody who is not experiencing emotions. They're not experiencing things the way we do. They don't see the world the way we do. She's under the impression the world is just something she can go in there and do pretty much whatever she wants. She knows there are rules. She knows there are boundaries, but she obviously doesn't stick by those rules and boundaries, from drug use to the problem she had with little children that she did, these other horrible things she's done. No, I mean, that follows the path of a psychopath. You know, you've got drugs, you've got abuse, you've got violence, all those things fall right in line with that personality type. I don't know if she's a psychopath or not. You can't really tell just by looking at one interview like this. You can get a pretty good idea, that's for sure. But she definitely has a lot of the hallmarks and red flags for that. So I hate to say I like it because of that, because she's so odd. She's so blank in her awareness of how the world sees her or sees what she does, and the way she reacts to something that's horrible, like her friend being killed in front of her. And she talks about standing there watching this guy do that, and she didn't scream. She didn't say don't. She didn't say, wait a minute, hold on, let's think about this. And then she saw this girl being killed as the solving of a problem taken care of. Nothing, you know, that was the problem's taken care of. Now we go forward, because I don't want to get in trouble for them finding drugs in my car, which I would do 4 to 7 if it's hardcore. If her car's loaded with it, and she'd probably get out early. So no, she'd rather kill somebody than get in trouble for the other stuff. I don't have any room for these kind of people, especially when they treat little children that way. So I'm glad she's experiencing the things she's experiencing in prison, and I hope she stays there forever. I don't think they're going to let her out. They'd be crazy to let her out early, but that's what she's going for. That the thread that's going through this is, I need to get out early. It's probably the only reason she did this interview as well, because she thinks that would probably help her. So that's all I got. All right, fellas, thanks is another good one, and we'll see you next time. All right, Mark, what's up? Oh, shit. Sorry.